I have so many memories attached to that particular song right there. That's hackling on and on, playing right now on my background music, and I have so many memories attached to that. Good morning, everybody. You're gaming with the Team Monster. I'm showing a little All Blacks pride this morning for no good reason. I'm the Team Monster. It's good to see you all this morning. But yeah, this particular song, the two memories I have to this is it shows up at the end of the movie Mortal Kombat. I don't know if any of you remember the movie Mortal Kombat with Christopher Lambert as I believe he was, I think it was Raiden. That was a weird ass movie. It was I mean, it was fun, but it was like one of the early like video game movies, and I just remember loving the soundtrack. But man, the actual movie itself was a little, it was missing a step or three. But it was cool seeing Scorpion. It was in the early days of CG special effects. So that was a bit, that should tell you something. Yeah, that I'm old. And then the other memory I have of it was that of this song. This is the opening song in the movie Hackers. Now, Hackers is what I call a guilty pleasure. I refer to Hackers as a guilty pleasure because that movie really doesn't age well because of the technology and of how they make, of how the director tried to make hacking look almost artistic, which maybe to some people it is, but it's nothing. It looks nothing like what I've been in high secure server rooms before. They look nothing like where Penn Jillette was. I'm just saying, which was again a real funny aspect of the movie. But this was the opening song, and I do remember it was. So, yeah, Hackers is one of those movies where they try to do. They try to turn hacking into an art film, like an art film kind of approach. Like I remember it opens with this tracking shot, right? A tracking shot of the city and then they do this superimposing of a computer board, similar to what they did in Tron, in the original Tron. And I'm like, okay, I see what you're going with there, but we kind of did this already with Tron, so let's try to come up with something else. And but I remember the soundtrack, and I remember this particular song. Sorry for starting late, everybody. I got into a conversation with a buddy on Discord about some pretty heavy stuff. The graphics for coding, I know, right, Shelly, right? He's got my brain thinking about some stuff now. He's got my brain thinking about some stuff. So I don't mind doing a little real talk before we get into the horror that is The Last of Us. By the way, before anybody asks, the reason I am in subs only, I'm just going to give everybody a reminder. I'm only doing subs only for The Last of Us Part 2 because I heard even in this late stage of the game, people come in and they drop spoilers in chat. So I've got a hard fast rule about spoilers, at least for this video game, because so far I've remained spoiler free. I have a few assumptions, I have a few ideas kicking in my head. But for the most part, I'm trying to stay spoiler free right now. So this is not me stroking my ego at subs only. My thing is that I'm using this as a security measure. The lady writes with the follow. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, lady. I do appreciate that. If you're a fellow writer like me, I do appreciate it. I'm not worried about you at all, Shelley. But the conversation I have in my mind is so I was talking with a buddy about being recognized by the community, but by the gaming community. I was talking about him with it just now, and the analogy that I gave him about where you stand in the community, that sort of thing. I turned it on myself and I said, let me go ahead and let me give you my aspect of it. For those of you who are new to the stream, for those of you who are watching, in chat, because that's the thing about subs only. Yeah, you can't talk, but you can still watch, you can still listen. thing is that my background with podcasting, my background with content creation. Let's just say content creation, since that's the hot phrase. That's the catchphrase of what all the Utes are saying right now. The catchphrase is content creation, and my history of content creation dates back to 2005. I'm the first person to podcast a novel from cover to cover. We can split that hair of who did what when, but the truth of the matter is this. I started podcasting in January 2005. And then after I started, Mark Jeffrey popped in and then Scott Sigler popped in. So it was just the three of us, and we were doing novels. We weren't doing short fiction. We were doing novels. We weren't the first people to podcast fiction. We were first three to podcast a novel from cover to cover. And out of the three of us, I was the first one to finish. And I believe it was Scott finished after me, and then Mark Jeffrey finished after me. Not that we were like tracking or anything, but this is just the way it was, you know. And I bring this up because as I was podcasting Moravia, the opportunity to write Podcasting for Dummies popped up. So I went on ahead and grabbed it, and I've been writing Podcasting for Dummies since then. So I've got 15 years affiliated with this title. I am the only author to be the consistent author from beginning to end in Podcasting for Dummies. And that includes expert podcasting practices for dummies. Back at you, Phoenix. Back at you, Shelley. But I mean, but the point I'm getting at is, I got 15 years invested in this title. It's going to be 15 years come November. We've got the 4th edition coming out. It's when you get a 2nd edition Dummies book. This is what I learned. When you get a 2nd edition Dummies book, they consider that a pretty successful title. You're going in for your 4th edition. That puts you into a different echelon. At least that's the way it was explained to me. But even with all the accomplishments of what I've done as a podcaster and as a content creator, let's just say content creator, right? I am barely a footnote in the eyes of the podcasting community. You could go out right now to the podcasting community, the current podcasting community, and it would be a small wonder if they knew of any podcast before 2010, because apparently that was when podcasting started, was 2010. And did you know, Chad? Did you know, according to Wired magazine, thanks to Welcome to Night Vale, we have podcast fiction. It's a thing now. Which, again, I basically blame the podcast community because they've bought into that. When in reality, before I even started podcasting fiction, Mur Lafferty was doing that. Now I don't want to be the guy that's on his get off my lawn, you young whippersnappers don't know anything. Here's what I would say in response to that, Shelley. I wouldn't say we don't get respect. It's more like the people who are currently podcasting cannot be bothered to do 5 minutes of research to find out, when did the movement really begin? When were people doing X, Y, and Z? I mean, you know, I don't want to necessarily name names. I don't want to get into it. Well, I am into it, though. That's the funny thing. But a good example is there's this, and I don't know who's behind the award. But there is an award out, or there's a group out that has a podcasting Hall of Fame. I think the whole thing is virtual, to be fair. Mur Lafferty's in it. Dawn and Drew are in it. There are a lot of original podcasters who are in this podcasting Hall of Fame. I believe Sigler's in it. I believe Scott Sigler's in it. But the guy who is behind Podcasting for Dummies, not in it. And even then, there's some things that bother me. I don't mind being vocal about this, because I would be pleasantly surprised if the word got back to him. But I love the fact that Evo Terra is still involved in podcasting. What I don't appreciate is that sometimes he takes credit for Podcasting for Dummies. And I'm like, okay, I mean, he has thrown it out there that he is the author of Podcasting for Dummies, period. Now, my problem with that is that he was the author of the first edition back in 2005. His involvement, with 2005. His involvement in Podcasting for Dummies ended in 2006. That was made very clear to me. Very clear. Wasn't anything I did. I want to say that. He just didn't want to be affiliated with he didn't want to be affiliated with the title anymore. But that being said, Evo has taken a lot of credit for writing Podcasting for Dummies, which I've had to bite my bottom lip on because, one, Evo's a friend of mine, but also, two, it bothers me that with a lot of the events that he's been affiliated with, my name has never come up, and that hurts. It hurts. It hurts that I am barely a footnote in something that I've been especially in the title as influential as Podcasting for Dummies, and it hurts that the podcasting community just does not seem to give two shits about me. Here's the thing. I don't podcast for the community. I And Shelly, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I do. I sincerely appreciate that. Thing is, I didn't cozy up with the right people, maybe I didn't, maybe I wasn't friendly enough at some of the previous podcasting events that I've attended. And as flirtatious as I can be, Shelly can attest, as flirtatious as I can be, that's saying something, that I wasn't friendly enough with the right people. Wink, wink, not trying to say no more. But the thing is that I also know too that there was a real rock star mentality for a while being a podcaster, in that you know, we were the rock stars, and we were getting away with a lot of stuff that maybe we shouldn't have been, which is now people are casting a side eye to, and I've been vocal about that as well. I will say I felt like I avoided that. I avoided a lot of that because to me, I don't podcast for adulation. I podcast because I'm passionate about something. And I would say the same thing about the podcasting community as I do about the gaming community. You know, I would say the same thing about any community around any game. You know, I would say, yeah, there are going to be some people that maybe I need to be nicer to if I want to be part of that upper echelon. I was telling this buddy of mine that the reminder that I got about this, and I know this is pretty heavy talk for Friday, but I mean, like I said, the Pistons are firing upstairs, and I haven't even had my first cup of coffee. There was a streamer that I follow and I respect, and to some extent I still do, but I will say the respect has been tainted a little bit because this particular streamer came on and said, said on Twitter, I wish I was good enough to be a guest on a podcast. I reached out to her and said, I would love to have you on the podcast, because this particular streamer, she had been doing a lot of raids, and I thought this would be great. We can get on here, we can talk about raids, it'll be fun. Crickets. Week goes by, I send a follow-up, crickets. Second week goes by, I give her another follow-up, crickets. And we had to do a show. So we went ahead and we did the raid show, and we did it with me and Brandon. Following week, the same streamer who said, I wish I was good enough to be on a podcast, so it says, hey, I'm going to be on the Destiny Community Podcast this week. Yay! I'm like, oh, okay. I misunderstood what you said. It's not that you wanted to be good enough to be on a podcast. You wanted to be good enough to be on a specific podcast. But had you mentioned the specific podcast, that would have been uncool. And yeah, exactly, Shelley. She wanted to be on a specific podcast. And that was a real slap in the face, because it's like, oh, you've been on a podcast, I'll be on a podcast, but not your podcasty, because who's heard a happy hour from the tower? And yet we've had people like the Big Marvinsky on, we've had Aura on, we've had Lulu on, we've had K Magic 101. We've had really good guests. We've had voice actors on from the show. We've had a pretty good run. well, you see, Shelley, we haven't had you on because we haven't run together. Oh, there we go. So now you're gonna have to be nice to me, I guess. But this is what I mean. And if I did things because I wanted acceptance from the community, I would have given up podcasting years ago. What I find funny is that, man, people love to talk a good game about podcasting, all the applications of podcasting, but very few actually try to apply it in the business world. Because when you try to apply podcasting to the business world, 9 times out of 10, it's an utter train wreck. And that's the thing. This is where I'm coming from, Shelley. Back in the day when I was doing a podcast, nobody knew what it was. and I was trying to get author guests to come on and talk about marketing. And some of the higher interest guests, some of the higher echelon writers that I was reaching out to, I would be really curious as to which one was rude. I could see how, but you see, that's the thing. Some people from there were probably the nicest person, and we're not going to speak ill of the dead if that's the case. You can whisper it to me if you want, but I will give you a real quick story. The one BSG actor that I have very fond memories of, and I was just thinking about him yesterday, was Richard Hatch. Richard Hatch could not have been nicer. And I brought him on to the Survival Guide to Writing Fantasy just on the thinnest of lines, in that he had written the he really was. But Richard Hatch, the thin line that I brought him on with the Survival Guide was that Richard Hatch had written either a comic book or something along those lines, and but he also written like the Battlestar Galactica: The Return, which was one of the things that he was really passionately involved with. But we talked about the evolution of BSG, we talked about the evolution of that, and then we talked about it from a marketing perspective, what worked for him, what didn't work for him, things like that. And it was really a lot of fun talking to him. But there were some authors that I talked to in those early days of podcasting where they knew nothing about podcasting. They were like, well, I can't listen to this because I don't have an iPod. I'm so happy I don't have to explain that to people. And I remember saying, I don't want to talk about the craft. I want to talk about the business. Well, that's someone else's job. I'm like, no, it's not. And nowadays, oh man, nowadays you can't throw, now authors are just like, hey, you want me on your podcast? Woo, let's go. And it wasn't always like that. Hell, I remember when Joe Rogan first started podcasting, when the Joe Rogan Experience went live, I remember people rolling their eyes and going, oh, here we go. Joe Rogan's hitching his bandwagon onto podcasting. Now he's the golden boy because he signed a 7-figure deal with Spotify. And again, I'm not disparaging on those folks who found it. God bless Welcome to Night Vale. God bless Joe Rogan. But where I get upset is when the community thinks, well, they're the real trailblazers. I would have much rather had the Seth Rogen Experience. Hell yeah, testify, Marv. But where I get upset is where I'm like, hey, look, I've been at this for 15 years, and that was the other thing too. I know I've told the story before. I'll tell it again. There was a marketing slicky boy that was in our office one day, and this was like in 2014, 2015. and he mentions podcasting and how podcasting should be a thing. And that's when the professor who ran that school said, "Oh, I have a podcast," and I had to bite my bottom lip because he had a podcast and it was absolute shit, and I couldn't touch it. I just wanted to clean it up on the iTunes directory, and I was told that is off limits. And we're going back and forth, and then after he left, I said, "So you've been podcasting? Do you mind if I ask how long you've been podcasting?" And he said, "Oh, I've been podcasting for a long time. I've been podcasting since 2012." And I just nodded and smirked and said, "Okay, that's cool. That's cool. This is, 3 years is a good long time." He goes, "Do you podcast?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "How long have you been podcasting?" And that's when I said, "I've been podcasting for about a decade now. I'm the author of Podcasting for Dummies. I've also written books like All of Twitter, Social Media for Writers. So I know a thing or two about podcasting." And he just reached into his pocket, pulled out his business card, and said, "Would you like to come and speak at our event?" And I wound up speaking at his event, and it was all right, but it was a lot of marketing yahoos that were basically like, "How do I monetize podcasting?" And I'm sitting going, "Look, you can monetize anything. You could monetize a loaf of bread if you wanted to. Where you're going to run into a problem with podcasting is the amount of time that a business is going to want to invest into it. And if you have that is something that I do now. Whenever I interview for social media positions, I go, "How seriously do you take your social media?" And when they go, "What do you mean by that?" "We take it very seriously." I said, "Well, you see, I've heard that before. And yet I'm the first person that's always laid off. I'm the first person that's being told, we don't have it in the budget for that. Even though I've got all the equipment here to produce a podcast with, I'm told we don't have the first it's we don't have the resources, then it's we don't have the time." And this is something you never hear the marketing people talk about. Just, we got to have a podcast. Great. And the point I'm getting at in this little rant is, if it was about the community for me, I would have stopped a long time ago. But the truth of the matter is, I love this. Pardon me. I love to podcast. I love getting on in the mornings and in the evenings with you all and hanging out. Last night, when my daughter and I ran in Destiny, in the original Destiny last night, I was having an absolute blast. And the way I look at it is this. If the community on a whole misses out on me playing Destiny with my daughter, if the community misses out on me and my wife reading lore by the fire, if the community misses out on me raising $5,000 for No Kid Hungry, that's their loss. It's not about the community. It's about me coming on here and creating the best content I can. And I will always feel that way. And yes, I have goals for myself. I would love to see myself become a Twitch partner in 5 years. And this year will mark my 3rd year as a streamer. So I got 3 down, 2 to go. So this is what I learned. This is what I learned about being a Twitch partner. That's a long journey. No matter how you cut it, that's a long journey. When I went to TwitchCon, I learned very quickly there was a lot more to Twitch than video games. Morning, Farrell. How are you? I learned there was a lot more to this platform than just video games. And you know what? I mean, as you've all heard me say before on this stream, I'm the guy that wrote this book. And yet, when I was at TwitchCon, nobody believed that book was legit. Everybody thought it was some prank prop that I had produced specifically for TwitchCon, which I find absolutely mind-blowing. Because one, if I did have a prop like that, holy cow, if that got back to the dummies people, they'd come down on me like a ton of bricks. They have a legal team. That goes out of their way to say, yeah, you called that such and such for dummies. You might want to pull that back. And that's the thing, Farrell. That's the thing. I didn't write the book to endear myself in the community. Oh, there are people who think that. There are people who think, oh, this guy did it as a get-rich-quick scheme. And I'm like, you obviously didn't read the book, because there's an entire section there that says, don't quit your day job. And that's where it gets back to me and my standing in the community. Even with all the stuff that I do in the Destiny community, I'm not even a blip on the radar. And I have friends who are higher, they're better skilled players, and they're more high level streamers. And I've been lucky enough in the past to be rated by some really good people. I've been rated by Chevy. I've been rated by Sniperton. I've been rated by Gigs. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm suddenly going to become one of the outstanding members of the community. I'm just going to... I have to be... At this point, somebody would say, well, this is when we quote Shakespeare, to thine own self be true. The problem by saying to thine own self be true, just as a sidebar, is that was spoken by Polonius, one of the most sanctimonious, one of the most hypocritical characters in Hamlet. But those words do carry some weight, to thine own self be true. I'm going to be true to myself, which means that I am going to continue to create content. I'm going to continue to podcast. I'm going to continue to write books like this. I'm going to continue to create the best content I can create, whether it is with this game or something else. And if that means that if I am not good enough for the community, then maybe the community is something that I don't necessarily need in my life. Exactly, Shelley. And we say that in Podcasting for Dummies. Heck, I say that in Twitch for Dummies. And the real reality of this is that if you think you're in with a community, just remember, as easy as it is to get into a community, it is even easier to get booted out. We have seen that in Twitch. We have seen that in these in science fiction writing circles. But the thing is, Mar, this is the other thing. I think you've turned your back on an aspect of the Destiny community. I mean, and that's what I was telling this. That's what I was telling this buddy of mine this morning. I don't hold the the game itself or the Destiny community. I think there are different levels of said community, and I mean there are people in the Destiny community that they may know each other. Their circles may never meet. And the way I look at it is that my Destiny community is a community of people that come in and they support this stream and they support me and they get to know me as an individual. At least the ones that I feel fortunate enough that keep coming back and keep and ask me questions. If people just hang out in my stream, then they hang out in my stream. Great. I'm good with that. I'm good with that. Get to know me that way. But I think there are all different layers of the community. There are some people in the community that are all about the Vish plays. Then there are some people in the community that's all about the personality. That's where I fall in, and that's why I do stuff like this. But Marv, that's one thing I would say about this. That's not on the Destiny community. That's on that individual, and you're not alone in that. Ludo's had that problem. When he was doing Nightfall carries, ZG had that problem. James Work has that problem, and that's that I think is part of the trade-off. There have been people who have come into this channel and have done that, and I'm like, all right, cool. Or there have been people who have come in here expecting to find that. They see that I'm not that caliber of a player, even though they're having fun with us. They find out that I'm not that caliber of player, and they F off. And I'm like, okay, cool. But then I got people like Gus coming in here with that host. Thank you, Gus. I appreciate that. That's a chain nerd, everybody. I really think that there are going to be people that will use Twitch as a ways and means of farming what they need to get done in the what they need to get done, and then they just disappear. And if that's the way you handle a community, then you know that's it's frustrating. But and maybe this is me. I look at myself as being very accessible and being very blessed in the respect that when I got raided by the Kick Club, most of those people, I would say 95% of those people, I have not heard from again. But those 5% that have stuck around, they've become major voices in the community, in my corner of the Destiny community. And I've met some really nice people through that kicking. And there, you know, when I look at chat, I had one guy DM and demands I carry him through Nax. What is Nax? I don't know what Nax is. But that's the thing. There are people who believe, okay, if I come onto your stream, I'm doing you a favor. Oh, a WoW raid. Got it. I mean, there are people that But again, that's where I say, look, if that is what Twitch is to you, then okay. That's not what Twitch is to me. And I would love to be able to Sherpa or do something like that for folks. Oh, this one, yeah, I remember now. All right, I regularly remember this. Yeah,